This week on the Destination Angler, let's talk about this lower Yellowstone region. So there are just a bunch of really great trout streams, isn't there, that flow north out of the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness into the Yellowstone. And I feel like they're kind of the overlooked rivers of Montana. Everyone's rushing over to the Bozeman area, and it's for good
Yeah,
reason. There's great fishing over there, or up to Missoula and every place in between. But maybe not as many people on the Stillwater. We didn't hardly see anybody on the
yeah,
Stillwater. We were there for 3 days. And I mean, that's kind of nice. You can go to Montana and find some great fishing and not a lot of crowds. But what do you think?
yeah. As you know, you go to, so to speak, the name rivers and fisheries here in Montana, like the Bighorn, Missouri, and Madison in the July and August timeframe, and you're gonna be in a traffic jam at the boat ramp put in. So we're pretty fortunate. I would say if there's 5 or 6 boats out there, that's crowded to me.
Really? Oh my gosh. And that was Chris Fleck on the Stillwater River. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping trout anglers avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Download it in the App Store today and get 20% off using promo code DESTINATION20. By Adams Built Fishing Gear, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear built to last at an affordable price. And by Anglers Coffee, fueling your next cast with amazing coffee delivered to your doorstep one batch at a time. Get started today and save 20%. And by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed to your level of experience and budget. Up next on the Destination Angler, we jump over to the Idaho Panhandle for the wild and remote St. Joe River. Then we hop over the pond for some trophy brown trout fly fishing in Troutland County in the country of Finland. Other shows we have in the works: Montana Spring Creeks, roosterfish in the Baja Peninsula, Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and many, many more. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on the Flathead River for some high adrenaline whitewater fly fishing with none other than Hillary Hutchison. You won't want to miss these shows. And now you can catch the Destination Angler podcast on YouTube. Be sure to check out the latest episode on the Thoroughfare region in Yellowstone National Park. And today our destination is a true Montana hidden gem, the Stillwater River. And our guest is expert guide and outfitter Chris Fleck, owner of Stillwater Anglers, Nye Montana. Often overlooked, the Stillwater is one of Montana's best-kept secrets. Flowing north out of the Absaroka Mountains into the Yellowstone River, the Stillwater is anything but still. Here anglers will find challenging whitewater, boulder fields with tremendous pocket water, prolific hatches, and some of the most spectacular scenery in all of Montana. Best of all, the Stillwater is a haven for anglers looking for solitude. Chris caught the fly fishing bug early as a kid in Wyoming. He traveled the world serving 23 years in the Marine Corps and now makes his living on the waters around Nye, Montana. Today, Chris shares his secrets of the Stillwater, along with the nearby Boulder River, Rosebud, Rock Creek, even Patagonia. We cover the major hatches, top fly patterns, what makes this river a little tricky to float, high water techniques, tactics for gorged fish, and how to fish the elusive nocturnal stonefly. Stick around to the end for a great story of a giant brown trout, plus local hotspots like the Fishtail General Store and the famous Grizzly Bar. So come beat the crowds with Chris on the Stillwater. Welcome to the show, Chris. Great to have you.
Thank you, Steve. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, and the Stillwater is such an amazing fishery. We were out there a number of years ago, and it was tough. We were there in August, and we had a hard time with it. So I can't wait to hear from you how to fish this thing in August. I got a feeling we might have missed those nocturnal stones or something. I don't know. But anyway, what I wanted to start with is just that you've spent quite a few winters in Patagonia over, 5 or 6 years now?
Yeah, I've been going down to Argentina every year. I mean, we missed a year or so there with COVID, but yeah, I think for 7, 8 years now, and you'll go down in the January, February time frame. And this last year it was fantastic. Went down in early January to about mid February, and was down there a little over a month. And I mean, didn't fish every day, of course, but got a lot of good fishing in, and a lot of other things that we did. So that's what I like to do in the wintertime.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you take your wife down there?
Yeah, yeah, sure to do, and kind of turned that into an annual trip. Didn't start out that way. I went down the first time, and I don't know, I was there a week or 10 days, and then went back again and again, and then now just kind of made it an annual event.
Yeah. So what is the attraction for you going to Patagonia?
It's very similar to this part of Montana that I'm at, as far as the geography, the terrain, even the river systems. So very similar. And of course, I'm fishing for trout down there. A lot of people are kind of like, well, aren't you tired of fishing for trout? Want to fish for something else, but I just enjoy fishing for trout. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's good fisheries down there, and I've been fortunate that I've made friends with a guy down there that and his family. So, we're able to enjoy that aspect of it as well. So it's just a great trip.
How about that? What's a guide cost per day down there?
I think a guide is running around 500 US.
Okay.
It's hard to say because there's probably they're in a real state of flux down there. They had to change the government, and their economy was just the inflation rate was just totally out of control.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It first looked pretty tame, and so they're trying to get stabilized in that regard. So some of the pricing and thing like that may fluctuate a little bit, but
How about that? And what part of Patagonia were you in? You said Argentina, but what area?
yeah, the Patagonia region, kind of based out of a little small town called Junín de los Andes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can Google it and find it there, and it's kind of in I'd say it's kind of like the equivalent here in Montana of Livingston or Bozeman or something like that. Kind of in the heartland of a
Cool.
lot of good trout rivers and streams within a 50-mile radius.
Yeah. And you particularly like the people down there, don't you?
Very much so. Yeah, people are just fabulous and very warm and friendly and helpful. It really is a wonderful place.
Huh, that's fantastic. Well, it's on my bucket list. I'll have to call you.
Yeah, well, you should. I mean, I tell guys, I can give you some suggestions on some things, and they have all types of accommodations down there. I mean, there's some pretty upscale lodges that you can stay at, or you can, stay at a little lesser lodging or whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do.
How about that? Very good. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here and let's talk about this lower Yellowstone region. So there are just a bunch of really great trout streams, isn't there, that flow north out of the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness into the Yellowstone. And I feel like they're kind of the overlooked rivers of Montana. Everyone's rushing over to the Bozeman area, and it's for good
Yeah,
reason. There's great fishing over there, or up to Missoula and every place in between. But maybe not as many people on the Stillwater. We didn't hardly see anybody on the
yeah.
Stillwater. We were there for 3 days, and I mean that's kind of nice. You can go to Montana and find some great fishing and not a lot of crowds. But what do you think?
Yeah, as you know, you go to, so to speak, the name rivers and fisheries here in Montana, like the Bighorn, Missouri, and Madison in the July and August time frame, and you're gonna be in a traffic jam at the boat ramp put in. So we're pretty fortunate. I would say if there's 5 or 6 boats out there, that's crowded to me.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
usually, and the thing I always say about the Stillwater is it has a lot of uh, different user groups. So you've got, of course, guys like me that are out there doing commercially guided fishing. A lot of people in the area, just like anywhere else in Montana, have their own boats and rafts, doing their own recreational fishing. A lot of people in the summertime out there just floating. Families out there in a raft just floating. There's tubers. There's 2 commercial rafting companies, that whitewater rafting, that operate during part of the season. So it's kind of a long way around of saying there's a lot of different user groups, as I said, that use the river, but I always say it seems to be able to kind of spread out and accommodate all of the different users. And so, every once in a while you come around a bend in the river, you're counting on getting into this spot and anchoring up, maybe getting out wade fishing, and there's somebody in there. Well, you just go down to the next one. That's how it is. Yeah.
The way it used to be everywhere in Montana a number of years ago, I'd love to talk about some of the other rivers. We're going to spend a lot of time in the Stillwater today, but what about some of the other rivers that flow north into the Yellowstone?
Yeah, of course, our sister drainage to the west, as you mentioned, the Boulder, comes in confluence with the Yellowstone there at Big Timber. That's a little tougher access than the Stillwater. It doesn't have quite as much public access in the lower section. You get up into the national forest, of course, and then there's plenty of public access up there. And in a lot of places, the road runs literally right along the river, so you can just do a pull out and rig up and start fishing right there. So, the upper Boulder's got some cutthroat in it that are kind of nice. If you like to catch some cutthroat, it's a little dicier to float. It's got a very short window, just the way runoff usually goes to float it before it gets just so low that it's extremely difficult to float. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So I've been on the Rosebud, the East Rosebud anyway. What are your thoughts on the Rosebud?
Kind of the same thing. The East and West Rosebud. One of the things I've said about the East Rosebud, I don't fish that much, but it's probably one of the most scenic places to fish.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Up against the Beartooth Front.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's quite as good a fishery up there for whatever reason. At least, maybe that's just where I was fishing it or what have you. But and of course, it was really hit hard by the flood. 2 years. Yeah, the East Rosebud and the Stillwater really got hit hard. The West Rosebud, well, not quite so much because it's got Mystic Lake up there that was able to capture a lot of that water, and they were able to do a little more controlled release, so it wasn't just this violent flow of water come shooting down out of there. But
yeah, we had a blast. Actually, we hiked up through there because the beaten path goes up right through that that campground at the lake, just on the East Rosebud, and we hiked all the way up and over there, and we did really, really well up in there in the Alpine Lakes.
Yeah, in fact, that road was washed out. Let's see, they just I think they just got it repaired this last maybe fall or so. So it was out of action for about a year or 15 months or more. The people that had the little cabins and whatnot up there at the lake, they weren't able to access. In fact, a lot of people, they had vehicles and things that were trapped up there, and they were helicoptering vehicles out and all kinds of.
Oh my gosh!
But the river pretty much just in some places just shot down the road and totally washed out the road.
No kidding. Boy, that was. How much snow did you guys get over there? What was your snowpack, like percentage or?
That year?
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is I can't recall the exact number. We had a decent snowpack, but it was kind of like they say that perfect storm of all these different events coming together. It was a wet, and cool April and May. We got a lot of rain here in the valley and in the lower hills. So the ground was pretty well saturated. But the big event that happened that kind of kicked off the flood was, let's see, the big flood was on the 13th of June. So that was a Monday, Sunday night, Monday. So it was like Saturday. It rained hard.
Yeah.
On the higher elevation snow fields up in the mountains, like 9,000 foot level, somewhere up in there. Because it warmed up. We had a backup one. We had a snowstorm on Memorial Day weekend. So like 2 weeks prior to that, we got more snow. And it just, like I said, this perfect storm sequence of events came together. So it was all of this snow with the heavy rains hitting that just came gushing out rather than trickling out.
Now, your house is in Nye, right next to the river, right?
We're right on the river.
Were you nervous? I mean, did you almost get washed out?
No, we didn't. We're fortunate as we sit up high enough that we didn't sustain any damage to our property.
Okay.
There was some washing on the riverbank. It's kind of natural, but as far as as the house or, any of our structures or anything like that. We were fine. Now, some of the neighbors didn't fare quite so well. But just to continue on that, it must have been 2 or 3 in the morning on Sunday night, June 12th. It sounded like 2 freight trains were just roaring down the riverbed. I mean, it woke me up. And it was dark, of course, and I knew something was going on, obviously. And then first light, as soon as it got light, around that time of year, it's 4:30, 5 o'clock. So when I could get enough light to start seeing. And it was just this vast amount of water and all kinds of debris and so forth. So there's a hay field across the river from us here that's a lower elevation. So the river had that place to go. And, as I looked out our windows here at the house, the river was running, a couple hundred yards wide, probably. And and like I said, up above us here, between where we're at and all the way up to like Woodbine Falls, there were some bridges taken out, there were some homes taken out, all that. So you had all this debris, of course, all of the log jams and cottonwoods were toppling into the river, and it was quite
a scene. Glad you made it.
Yeah, and then the USGS station is right down below Absaroka there, and it pegged out at 25,000 CFS.
Wow.
And broke the gauge, because again, you had not just all this Stillwater water that I'm seeing, but as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you had that East Rosebud coming in there, the confluence right south of Absaroka that forms the Rosebud for a short distance that dumps into the Stillwater. So you had that added volume as well. So it was crazy.
Big water. Do you struggle finding new trout streams to explore? Tired of stumbling around country roads looking for access points? Looking to escape the crowds? Then look no further, because Trout Routes has meticulously mapped and classified over 50,000 trout streams covering the entire lower 48, including 350,000 hand-curated public access points marked and ready for you to explore. I'm a huge fan of Trout Routes because they make it so easy to explore new trout waters. Many times, Trout Routes has helped me find new public water and get into fish fast. And the good folks at Trout Routes have been busy this winter making Trout Routes even better. Enter Stream Cards 2.0, the latest iOS release that brings together more info at your fingertips by organizing data like stream flows, access laws, nearest fly shops into easily accessible tabs for every river and stream in the app. And now you can check real-time stream height and flow rates with river data from stream gauges and compare those with historical data to spot trends. Pretty cool, huh? Planning a trip? Well, you'll love the advanced filter features that let you hone in on top-rated streams, boat ramps, camping spots, and more. So what are you waiting for? Start exploring today by downloading Trout Routes on your Apple or Android phone. Hey anglers, if you're on the hunt for fishing gear that's as tough as you are, look no further than Adams Built Fishing Gear. Since 2014, Adams Built has been the go-to choice for anglers who demand quality without breaking the bank. Their lineup of lightweight waders, high-quality nets, and meticulously designed fly boxes is second to none. But here's what really impressed me. Adams Built stands behind their products like no other. Every single item is guaranteed to last. Yep, you heard that right. And get this, Adams Built waders even come with a lifetime repair replace guarantee, with you only paying for shipping. Now that's a deal you can't beat. So why settle for gear that won't last? Make the smart choice and gear up with Adams Built Fishing Gear today. Ask your local dealer for Adams Built or visit www.adamsbuiltfishing.com and tell them Steve sent you from the Destination Angler podcast. Let's talk about the lower Yellowstone for a little bit before we get to the Stillwater, because once again, this is an area that maybe guides have overlooked for years and years, and there's still some big trout in the lower Yellowstone. Where is the lower Yellowstone in your mind? Where does it start?
Probably Big Timber,
Okay.
or maybe even between Big Timber and Livingston. There might be a transition. We do most of our fishing on the Yellowstone between Columbus and Big Timber. It's 40 miles of river, so there's several different beats and sections that we're able to fish. So very rarely do we have to go up above Big Timber, and very rarely, if ever, do we venture into, say, like Paradise Valley, because it's just pretty doggone crowded up there during the peak season. And we are seeing more folks coming down from the Livingston Bozeman area into that 40-mile section between Big Timber and Columbus to get out of that crowd.
Yeah. What's the fishing like through there?
The fish numbers are probably lower than they are, say, up in Paradise Valley. Don't have the cutthroat population. Maybe catch a couple of cutthroat during the course of a season, but it's not a very huge population. So rainbows and browns and whitefish predominantly. There are a few miscellaneous warm water species that have worked their way into the river system, and you'll find those kind of throughout the Yellowstone now. Not in huge numbers. Like,
Yeah.
if you wanted to go out and say fly fish for smallmouth bass, you can do that, say, down below Billings. But there's a few smallmouth bass here and there up in this area, and other miscellaneous warm water species.
But still pretty good fishing, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. And as you mentioned, I mean, there's some decent sized fish that you can still get a hold of. Yeah.
What's a good sized fish on the lower Yellowstone? What are you happy with?
I'd say 20 plus.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's some, every year you maybe get one or two that are in the 24 range. Anything bigger than 24 is probably definitely going to be the fish of the season for your boat. But very very common to get fish 15 to 20 range.
Yeah. Okay. And the other area we didn't talk about yet was Rock Creek over through Red Lodge, because I know that got hammered pretty good.
That got hammered.
But that's a nice fishery too. And isn't it Jeremiah Johnson, like real life Jeremiah Johnson from the movie? He actually settled in Rock Creek. Is that right? Or I mean, in Red Lodge?
Yeah. But, you'd mentioned, I mean, it got hammered hard by the floodwaters as well. And unfortunately, in the aftermath and some of the restoration work and whatnot, in some places, it's almost created a kind of a shoot of a effect on Rock Creek. Instead of they took out a lot of not just the man-made debris, but they took out a lot about the natural debris. Of course, it helps create habitat. So
yeah, shoot.
Wow. Yeah, that wasn't good. That wasn't good. So
that's too bad.
Yeah, that's too bad. But it's like you said, it's a nice place to fish. Got some wade fishing spots on it, and it doesn't get, I don't think, a lot of pressure.
Yeah, we did well over there. We fished. I've got a buddy who's got a place in Red Lodge, and Red Lodge was a sleeper town. It was an awesome town. Great restaurants, and we had a super cool town. And the whole area, like where you live, this Nye Fishtail area, but it's just beautiful up there. I mean, what's life like in Nye, Montana?
Well, there's not much to the place.
Yeah.
There's a couple of buildings, and that's about it. Of course, you've got the Stillwater mine. That's it's about 5 or 6 miles from where I'm sitting right now, and that's a huge employer, not just for the county but the state. But
I didn't know that.
There's not much to Nye itself. It's a rural agricultural area. There's a lot of ranch land in the area, which when we talk about the Stillwater, I'll get into that a little bit. But so it's just got a little place. There's one little joint where, beer joint, hamburger joint. There's a small little store.
Okay.
That doubles as our post office. They have our post office boxes there. Those are the only real businesses that have any kind of a brick and mortar presence. Everything else is just, houses. And
you must like it because you're kind of, you like that small town feel, I guess.
Yeah.
Since you live there.
Yeah. I would say it's no secret if you live up here full time. We have a lot of people in my immediate area here that are part timers, seasonal summer homes, or they live in, say, Billings, and maybe they'll come out on a weekend occasionally or something. You got to learn to love, or maybe that's the wrong word, but learn to exist with the wind. That wind can come ripping across that bare tooth front, and I mean it can really it can really howl. And the wintertime actually is worse than the summertime.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, we can get some nasty winds. So we were asking, people ask about, well, you must get a ton of snow up there. Well, we'll get snow, but it usually blows, and then the problem is drifts. You get chokes off some of the access roads here. They keep the highway open because it's a school bus route and for the mine traffic. So that gets plowed pretty quick and on a regular basis. But
all right, so let's talk about the Stillwater. What makes it such a fantastic destination in your mind?
Well, it has a reputation of being, again, during primarily the summer season, a really good dry fly fishery.
Huh.
So I think that's what probably most people like. I always say too that, and you fished it, so you can probably speak this well, that somebody had a pretty wicked sense of humor when they named the river the Stillwater. Because I think it's a misnomer. I think some people come out here and they think it's going to be a nice, gentle grassy bank, get my cane pole and my chair and, walk it in my tennis shoes. And, far from it. I mean, it's in some places, it's a real hazardous river. I mean, if you're floating it, you have to be an experienced oarsman in some places. I think it's extremely slippery river for wade fishing. So I always tell people that the best thing to wear is felt sole boots. And if you're not going to be in a boat, felt sole boots with some kind of studs on them is even better.
Yeah.
But I have not found a rubber or vibram soled boot sole yet that I feel comfortable with on the Stillwater. It's just too slick. It's all these rounded cobblestone rocks that have that nice protective slime on them.
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing about the Stillwater, it has, I think I always tell folks, a wide variety of different types of water to fish. So you have everything from, pocket water, pools and runs, riffle water, a wide variety of water, structure,
sure,
fish, all that type of stuff. So it's not just, one type of water throughout the whole system. And then as I said, the Rosebud comes into the Stillwater there at Absaroka. So as this upper river where I'm at right now, where my home is, as it starts to recede as the season goes along and, drops lower and makes, rowing and floating much more challenging. For floating, you can kind of shift down there to the lower river, and it's usually got enough water to last all the way into the fall. Just like everybody else in Montana, water is a big issue. So there's a lot of irrigation takeouts for agricultural properties.
Okay.
Yeah, things like that. So, we always have some fluctuations occasionally in flows as head gates are turned off and on.
Okay. Hey, folks, Anglers Coffee wants to fuel your next cast with great coffee delivered to your doorstep, one batch at a time. Anglers has been hard at work making great new coffee blends, such as the Stimulator Blend. This high-octane coffee has a delicious smoky flavor with 25% more caffeine. Sometimes you just need that little extra kick in the morning before you wet a line. Or how about the Rainbow Blend? Colorful and bright, this medium roast draws inspiration from the vibrant traits of the iconic fish. Much like the rainbow trout's vivid hues, you'll experience flavor reminiscent of the brilliant colors the trout is named for. And if you like it dark and bold, check out the Brown Trout Blend. This roast brings the spirit of the elusive brown trout with rich, dark chocolate notes, boldly intertwined with subtle smokiness, mirroring the rugged landscapes of the deep waters where brown trout thrive. And with every sip of Anglers Coffee, you support great conservation groups and charities such as the Mayfly Project. So head on over to anglerscoffee.com and fuel up today. Take 20% off your first subscription order by entering the code BREW20 at checkout. With so much information out there, it can get darn right confusing and even overwhelming to find the right fishing adventure. Sorting through all the options and fees can be quite the headache. Well, not anymore. I'm super excited to introduce Got Fishing. Got Fishing is a boutique booking agency for world-class fishing adventures around the world. They ensure that you are on the exact fishing trip that meets your skill level, budget, and desired experience. Whether you're a seasoned angler or new to the sport, Got Fishing's personalized service will help you decide which adventure is the best fit for you, your group, or even your business. Worry about fees? Worry no more. With Got Fishing, you won't pay anything extra because their services are entirely free for you. You see, Got Fishing exclusively partners with highly reputable outfitters who gladly compensate them for their services, ensuring a win-win situation. Explore the range of fishing adventures and learn more about the services Got Fishing provides at gotfishing.com. That's www.gotfishing.com. And check them out on Instagram too. Chris, what are kind of the major sections of the Stillwater? Kind of, can you break it down for us? Imagine there's like an upper, a middle, and a lower.
Yeah.
And where are those sections and what are they like?
So I generally, when I'm talking to somebody and use the term upper Stillwater, lower Stillwater, I kind of use the delineation point of Absaroka. From Absaroka down to the confluence, just upstream from Columbus. I call that the lower Yellowstone, or should be lower Stillwater. Then from Absaroka all the way on up to where it comes out of the Beartooth Mountains, I call that the upper Stillwater. So there's 40 or 45 miles of navigable river. I would say when it comes out of the mountains to where it flows into the Yellowstone. This section up here, the Nye area, that, as I said, it's a good place to fish. Right about this time here in April, we start to see rainbows come up out of the Yellowstone. They come all the way up. There's really good spawning habitat up here. A lot of nice gravel. So obviously watching where you're going, but you can catch some nice they're non-resident Stillwater, but some nice rainbows here this time of year. So then as I work downstream, so from here down to Cliff Swallow, I would say, so that's about 10 or 11 miles from here at Nye. It's extremely challenging in spots to float and row. So I always tell people that it's not a place that you want to go without somebody that's experienced or knows or somebody in your boat that has some experience that can teach you or something. So get a couple of reasons. There's a lot of boulder fields and things like that you got to maneuver around, but there's also a few bridges, very low bridges in there. So there's a kind of an optimal flow level where you got high enough flow that you don't have to maneuver around every single rock. You can float over a lot of them, but then yet it's down enough that you can clear those bridges without catching a fishing.
Sounds tricky.
Yeah, craft, exactly.
Man.
Yeah, and then down Cliff Swallow down to Absaroka. That's a real nice stretch. That's usually the first stretch. We start floating and fishing post runoff, and then that can be anywhere depending on how runoff goes and how the year goes. Anywhere from I've seen it as early as the 20th of June to I've seen it as late as well after the 4th of July.
Oh God, really? How big is the river in these different sections? Like how wide is it, deep, flow, CFS, that kind of thing?
So post runoff, it'll be flowing, when it's safe to get on, both by flows and then, bridges and then clarity and all other stuff. So that's all those factors go together. But, usually it's going to be 3,500 to 4,000 CFS at late June, early July. And, it starts to dwindle down and, it's pretty cold. So generally those first few times the guys on the river, even though the air temperature might be hot, if you're going to be doing a lot of wade fishing, you guys might want to wear waders because it's like, well, do I want to be uncomfortable in the boat, but comfortable in the water, whatever.
If you jump out and wade a little bit, you want to, it's going to be cold.
Yeah. Starting right out, the water's cold. And then that's still when you float this upper section. It's got again, like that optimal flow level where it's not so low that it just turns into a big rowing exercise. Like right now, here this time of year, the river is too low to float in this upper river. It just needs to get more volume, but that'll start picking up here any time. Yeah,
pretty soon, huh?
Pretty soon.
So the flows when you get into the fall, you go from 4,000 in the spring down to what in the fall?
300, 500, something like that. Yeah, by say October, November, somewhere in there. And, there usually is going to be like maybe a little bump in there, and that's generally attributed to, as I said, turn off a little irrigation water in a few of the head gates, so that'll bump up a little bit. But I think right now, I looked at the gauge the other day, and as I said earlier, the gauge is down there below Zorky. I think it was like 350, something like that, and that's actually slightly above normal for this time of year. So kind of the seasonal life cycle of the river. So right now it's probably about as low as it's going to be.
Yeah.
Typically, right around now, tax day, mid-April, is when the snowpack peaks, and then it'll start coming out, and it's all again a function.
Here it comes.
Yeah, of temperature, rain, but fairly normal.
I always ask this question: how well can you do on the Stillwater? Like, what's a decent day on the Stillwater for you?
I was talking to a friend of mine about that the other day, and you know, I've been guiding on the Stillwater since 2003, and I can recall taking virtually novice clients, giving them the old, Reader's Digest casting class in the parking lot, and throwing them in the boat, and they're catching fish. And,
Yeah.
now it seems to be, I don't know if it's a combination of events or whatnot. It seems to be a little tougher, not like it used to be in that regard, but you can have 20, 25 fish days out there. Yeah. And the size of the fish. I know most people like to catch a lot of fish. They like to catch big fish.
Sure.
So, you're not gonna. It's weird. In fact, I just got some data here not too long ago from our Fish, Wildlife, and Parks people on results of some fish surveys that they did. And the interesting thing is this upper river where I'm at, the fish population numbers are lower, but they're bigger. The average size is about 15. You get down where they did their surveys below Zorky, and it's kind of a reversal. The fish population numbers are greater, but the size is smaller. They're about 10 to 12, 14. So they generally are attributing that to the lack of habitat in this upper river. It's not as good. So those juvenile, younger classes of fish are kind of thrust out into the main channel where they become prey for the larger fish. As much structure and side channels and things for them to hide and grow and get a little meat on their bones to be able to escape those larger fish. Downstream they have a little bit better habitat. That's what I'm told.
Interesting.
Fish biologists.
So how do you adjust how you fish the upper and the lower? It sounds like structure is a little more
Yeah.
scanty in the upper.
The typical way we fish, I guess I should preface with there's a couple of different seasons. I guess we tend to focus in on the summer season because that's when most people fish and all that. But there's a period right now that we're getting into, the spring, where we can get some good dry fly fishing. I didn't notice it when I was out today, but we're on the cusp of getting marsh browns, good about
Okay.
size mayfly. We get
Yeah.
those. Depending on how the weather is, we'll get a decent sized blue winged olive. We do, and we get the caddis hatch. You've heard about the Mother's Day caddis hatch.
Sure.
So we get the caddis, again, anywhere from the end of April to, the 10th of May. And then of course, it just depends on when the water starts to get too turbid or too high to be able to successfully fish them. That's what we get. So we got this a good opportunity in the spring. And then of course, you can always nymph, you can always streamer fish.
Yeah.
Boom. Then we enter into runoff. We're not out there fishing the river during runoff. We're certainly not floating it. It's just too hazardous and unsafe. But as it starts to subside, as I mentioned earlier, we jump on it, at the end of June, and then through that summer period. And what we'll typically see in that summer period, again, like I said, most people, that's kind of what they think about is that, June, July, August timeframe, say 4th of July to Labor Day. So we'll get some stoneflies of a different variety of stonefly. We have golden stones. We do have even we'll get some salmon flies. We get PMDs for the mayflies. There's still going to be some caddis around. So there's a good smattering of bugs. So the dry fly aficionado, and the typical rig that we fish with most people, there's a lot of people are familiar with you can call it a dry dropper or hopper dropper, whatever you want to choose it. Basically you got a big bug floating on top that hopefully they'll eat it, but they don't eat it. You got a strike indicator with a hook on it at least, and then you got a nymph trailer underneath. That's a very common way of fishing.
Okay. And go back to that caddis hatch. So I think you're talking about a couple. There's a Mother's Day caddis, and then maybe it's something else that starts up in the summer. I'm kind of curious, like how big are those and what colors are they?
The caddis that we get here are typically, they kind of have a little black body on them. I found, they'll and in appearance as you see them, fluttering. But if you actually get one and flip it over, look at its abdomen and so forth, it's usually a darker color. I had one experience, this goes back several years ago in the lower river, just doing my personal fishing, wade fishing. And, I got in a whole bunch of rising fish on caddis. And I was just, for the heck of it, I just started throwing whatever, and they weren't picky. I mean, they were eating, different sizes, different colors and shapes. They were eating, the whole life cycle. They're eating pupa and emergers and dry. It was just one of those things, and I just experimented around. So, but I would say typically, maybe a darker body, about size 14.
Okay.
Or dry fly.
What patterns do you like?
I've got a couple of different one that, believe it or not, your basic elk hair caddis is probably as good as any. And I like to fish them that have a little bit of high vis, or of some kind on them, so you can pick it up on the water a little easier. Fluorescent pink or fluorescent green or something like that. I would say that's probably as good as any of them. So I would have, if I was telling somebody, I definitely have some of those, and then some sort of caddis pupa nymph. Like I was telling you earlier today when I was out wade fishing, I caught a nice brown trout on an olive caddis pupa.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it looks like those cases that you typically catch you and your nymph and on the river bottoms or when you turn over rocks. So that was kind of interesting to see that. Oh, geez, here it's the middle of April, but they're eating those things already. So, but then you can fish the caddis too, like I said, during the course of the summer as well. And I also always tell people, everybody's they think the time to fish the dry fly is when you see that big, blizzard of caddis, and they're driving on the river and they're either splattering on the windshield or getting in your ears, mouth and nose on the.
Yeah.
And usually by that time it's too late, because they've been gorging themselves for, I would say, a substantial period of time, days, probably subsurface. Everybody kind of gets turned on and attuned to what's happening in the surface and, visibly in the air. And they're whipping out their dry fly. Well, it's just like any other major hatch too, is they may still be eating the dries, but you got to look at the rise forms and, figure out, are they eating the dry or what are they taking? But the real point I wanted to make was that, if there's a million naturals out there, it makes it kind of tough to pick yours out of them.
Yeah. Why would they take your fly?
Yeah.
So
maybe the perfect fly, the right fly, and everything. But
I mean, are there like thousands of caddis on the water when that's happening?
We don't get that as much here on the Stillwater. Now, out of the Yellowstone, you'll get like,
I've heard blankets of them, like literally blankets floating down the river.
Or, in a swirling back eddy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the equivalent of, like on the Big Horn of the Missouri or wherever, you get this plethora of midges and they're on your boat and all of this stuff. It's kind of the same thing. So I've seen that more on the Yellowstone, not on the Stillwater quite so much. but definitely out there in the Yellowstone, they're a big, in a swirling foam back eddy
Yeah.
pool, just a blanket of them there on the water.
It sounds exciting to be, just see that, to see
Yeah.
a hatch of biblical proportions like that. But yeah, then good luck. So you mentioned rise forms a minute ago, and I want to just ask you about that. So tell me what you look for. What kind of a rise form do you look, and then how do you adjust?
Well, to try to determine if the fish is taking, a lot of times, they'll break the surface and you think they're feeding on the surface, but are they porpoising? Are coming up? Sometimes it's just a matter of the fish's momentum. They're eating maybe, and it's a tactic that we use a lot with our dropper nymphs, is maybe they're grabbing it as something is emerging up in the water column, 6 inches to a foot before it hits the surface, but their momentum, keeps them going, and they break the surface of the water. You go, oh, they're eating the dry fly, when in actuality, they're eating something that's emerging in the water column subsurface. Splashy rises, a lot of times, those can be smaller fish. A lot of the bigger fish are just, a little more subtle, I think, and just kind of,
Sure.
picking and sipping. And, of course, if you're fortunate enough to be an area fishing and that's what you see, then that's pretty obvious. They are taking something, right there on the surface when they're just up there sipping. But yeah, so trying to figure that out. So it's a nice tandem to fish sometimes, is maybe the dry fly with some sort of, merger or pupa or something, something like that beneath it. So maybe you're kind of capturing, both.
Yeah. So do you carry, mergers in different weights, so you've determined, okay, these guys are more like 6 feet or 6 inches under versus someone right in the surface sipping in a merger?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, fish, if you're nymphing, maybe, you're fishing something heavier, to be heavier bead or a tungsten bead or something like that. Just boom, 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 way down on the bottom.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like you said, you're trying to figure it out. So like right now, that's, they haven't started hatching yet. So that's where the nymphs are, is down on the bottom.
Yeah.
So that would probably be, if I was, as I did today, I just experimenting around and fished a caddis pupa and boom, I was successful. So that tells me that they're down there, but we still have a ways to go. The water's still super cold. Water's got to get up, above 50. It's getting up towards 50 right now.
Huh.
Yeah, but it's still pretty darn cold.
How much you've been in this game for a while, how much of a difference have tungsten beads made in your mind?
I think it makes a lot of a difference if that's what you want to do, is either, like I say, straight nymphing or, for a dropper to get down quickly. You've probably heard about the Perdigons.
Oh yeah.
That's the rage now.
Yeah. Tell people what those are, because I think people have heard of them, but.
And if I could just, I was in the shop business for a while. So I guess it's like in any endeavor, retail business, you go through some hot products, and I think back in, there was a period there when they first started coming out with like the foam hoppers. Oh my
Right.
God, club sandwiches and all that stuff. And then
Remember those? Yeah.
the chubbies. I don't know, maybe the chubby's been on the scene for what, 8 years now or 10 years now. Well, anyways, the Perdigons, at least it seems like that's the rage.
Yeah.
The last years, and they're thin. Typically, they'll have a little heavier bead. Most of them are tied as a jig, so they're inverted.
Yeah.
And boom, and
they get down.
The thing that makes them, yes, is they get down, and they get down quickly because of the lower profile and the weight. And I've had as everybody else, had a lot of success with those as dropper nymphs. The hopper dropper, dry dropper season in the summer.
What color style Perdigons have you seen?
I've had a lot of success on the Stillwater with an all-in-one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think actually I kind of lump them all together and call them all Perdigons. I think they actually call them Spanish bullets.
Okay.
If you're going to your fly shop and going to the bin or going online and trying to find it, or what have you. That's, I guess, is the name, but to me, it's the same thing. I mean, it's a big bead. It's got a tail on it, low, slim profile, and as I said, gets down in that water very quick, which is great.
You like a little tail on them, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And the other thing I want to ask you about, just because of the nature of the Stillwater having so many of these boulders in the water. I mean, I'm guessing you're doing a lot of pocket water fishing, but you're also floating. So tell me how you pocket water fish while you're floating. Is that just you're rowing backwards a lot for your clients, or how does that work?
If you're floating, generally during the portion that you're floating, it's kind of a drive-by in the pocket water. You want to
Pop it in there.
most of the audience probably is aware, reading the water and what's likely holding water for fish. And, structured rocks and boulders are good because it can break the current a little bit. And then when that current comes in around the rocks, it's usually, bringing in the food with it. But then to fish it, and you really want to work it, then, get out of the boat and wade fish it where you can, really, really work it a lot harder. So it's kind of tough to, do it from the boat, anything other than just drive by. And that's the other thing too, is particularly early in that post runoff summer season when the flows are high, as you can imagine, the speed or the velocity is pretty high.
Ripping.
You're moving. So I don't know if you want to get into the, gear and all that kind of stuff.
A little bit, yeah. Let's hear it.
So short, heavier leaders, because, casting distance is great, but you don't need to worry about, casting across the river because your line is going to be in 5 different current speeds. You'll never be able to end it and drift it. So usually you're shorter, accurate,
From a boat, you're saying?
Yeah, from a boat.
Like what tippet are you using?
I'll use as heavy as I can get, to be honest with you. But typically, if I'm fishing a bigger dry, that's going to be in a size 10 probably.
Yeah.
I'll run 2 or 3X.
2X even. Okay.
2X even. And then most of my droppers, I'll usually put on, if it's a big dropper, sometimes maybe I'll even use 3X. But I'd say the smaller droppers, the size 12s, 14s, and 16s, I'll usually run 4X. And in the last few years, I've changed my strategy or my thinking a little bit, and I've gone to fishing fluoro on my droppers. Typical monofilament works just fine, but I guess the characteristics of the fluoro, being, well, 2 things. It's a little bit stronger, as we know, a little more abrasion resistant. So when your dropper nymphs, or when you're catching a fish and you're rubbing it on the rock, maybe it'll hold up a little bit better. But the main thing that I think is just a little stiffer, and I think that helps the angler, particularly an angler that's maybe not quite as proficient in casting or experienced, helps maybe not get tangled quite so much.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's just a little stiffer. So that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Well, you would
Saying
know.
goes, but yeah.
Huh. Super. All right. So let's go back to the season. So we got, I think, about halfway through the season, we got to just getting into summer and some caddis, and I guess what else have you got?
So post runoff, okay, we'll start to get a family of stoneflies, as I mentioned. So we'll get golden stones.
Yeah.
We'll get even up mostly in this upper river. I don't know why that is, but I guess it just has to do with temperature and characteristics. We'll even get some salmon flies. We'll get yellow sallies. Then for mayflies, then, somewhere in early July, probably start to get PMDs. And that's it. And then we'll have this caddis. Usually they'll show up like in the late afternoon or evening on the bushes on the banks and that kind of thing, and you can fish them a little bit, but not probably quite so much during the heat of the day. So that's probably the primary bugs that we got going.
Okay. What about this nocturnals, the nox stone? Tell me about that.
So you'll be on the riverbanks and really see it out on the Yellowstone, probably more so than even here on the Stillwater. So on the riverbanks and the rocks, you'll see these husks from just all over the place. And I have a lot of people I've talked to that know a heck of a lot more about it than I do. But the theory is that, yes, they're eating these nocturnal stones, during the nighttime hours. And in some cases, they've gorged themselves. So they're just kind of laying low for the daytime, whether it's getting the dog days of summer and that water's getting warm, they're just hunkering down or whatever. So it can make it more challenging to get them to eat your hopper or to eat whatever you're fishing. But so what we'll do a lot though is that's when we're fishing a lot of stuff like the different varieties of, I'll call them, lump them all into one, girdle bugs, the rubber leg stuff. So we'll fish a lot of those, which I think that's what that's simulating is certainly a stonefly, whether it's nocturnal or just a stonefly in general. That's tumbling through the water.
Sure.
And there's a couple of good ones, that I've stumbled on. Pat's rubber leg. That's kind of a standard for Montana. That's got a whole bunch of rubber legs on it. You can get them with beads, not without beads. Get them tied on a jig hook. Some of them barbed, some of them barbless. So there's a whole bunch a slew of them out there. But that makes a good, point if you're nymphing. It makes a good point fly, and then you can trail, say, something smaller off of that. A generic, the generic beadhead nymph, which that's probably something I should have said about the Stillwater. If I could back up one and talk about nymphs, is I found that it seems that they like beadhead nymphs. Generally in smaller, I would say, by smaller, I mean probably 12 and smaller, maybe even more, 14 and 16. So, red copper johns have usually been good. Hare's ears, usually good. Prince nymphs, usually good. Pheasant tails, usually good. Those are what I would call, and it seems like they like the beadhead nymphs.
A red copper john.
Red copper john seems to work well.
Yeah, super interesting. I was telling you that we were out there in early August, and we had a hard time catching fish on the Stillwater. We were there for like 2.5 days, and I found out like a couple years later, talking to somebody, well, they got this nocturnal stonefly, and they were probably gorging themselves like you were talking about. And I just didn't know what tactics to try. We ended up hooking some nice fish, but it wasn't like we're having 20 fish days or anything.
Yeah.
And I figured, it's our first 2 days out there. We're just sort of getting dialed in. So that was probably part of it. But what would you do then? If the nocturnal stones are going, you're seeing those shucks all over, you throw those Pat's rubber legs, or would you try something else?
Yeah, I probably would throw a rubber leg. Maybe I would set up a straight nymph rig with a rubber leg, and like I say, something else off the back of it. And again, if they've gorged themselves, maybe they're to the point, as I was talking earlier, similar to where fish get with the caddis hatch is they've had a whole belly full, so maybe they're not, even if it drifts right in front of their nose, maybe they're not even going to pay any attention to.
When fish gorge like that, Chris, do you feel like it's going to be a couple days before they come back on, or it could be longer? What do you see?
Boy, I'd have to punt on that one. I don't know. I have to ask a biologist, but just from my own personal experience, I think it is probably a day, anyways. Before they're going to go on the feed again, and as it seems to be that the brown trout, more so than maybe some of the others, are more nocturnal. They're feeding, whether it's on that stone you're talking about, or whether it's on other stuff. You get out there at dusk or when it's getting dark, and you get more bugs going sometimes. And of course, they're eating the smaller fish as well.
Sure.
I think that makes it tougher sometimes in the summer, catching the nicer brown trout, because they've been maybe feeding all night. And as I said, with dog days of August, water temperatures getting up to near 70 degrees, and they're probably hunkering down in the bottom somewhere. And
yeah, finding something cold.
Not that you can't get them, but they're probably not as prolific as.
Sounds tricky. You almost have to hit it just right, or
yeah.
I don't know. Well, I wanted to ask you about your background because you've got a really interesting background. You were in the military for a long, long time, and here you are, fly fishing guide in Nye, Montana. How did that happen?
Well, I guess I can go way, way, way back in my history. So my folks were originally from Wyoming, and then after the war, they moved out to California, and that's where I came on the scene, and I grew up out in California, but always had this attachment to Wyoming. That's where you know all of my other aunts and uncles and cousins and my dad, mom's brothers and sisters and all that. So as I got to be a college student, and I worked on my aunt's cattle ranch down there in Wyoming, and I basically what I'm getting at is I like this general region of the country, the Rocky Mountain West, the Wyoming and Montana area in particular. So I always said, then after I was in the Marine Corps for, as you just mentioned, a little over 23 years. So well, when the time comes and I get a little more stable and settle down a little bit, I want to be in that general region of the country. And I had come here before I retired from the Marines. I had come to Wyoming and Montana, fly fishing trips occasionally when I had like that. And then my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, I've since remarried, but she was from Billings, so she still had a little family there. So we were starting to kind of think about where we were going to go, and we didn't want to live in Billings. Wanted to live in a little more rural. So that's how we settled in Columbus, which is about 35 miles up the interstate to the west from Billings. Small town, had a place about 8 or 9 miles out of town, a little acreage. So I had kind of a rural thing going, and
Nice.
and that's how I got here.
How did you decide I want to open a fly shop?
Well, so as I said, I retired in 2001. So I was just kind of enjoying, a little slower pace of life after 23 years of running around the world in the Marine Corps for about 2 years. And then a friend of mine in town an acquaintance I became friends with that had a fly shop and was an outfitter. I got to know him a little bit, and he started to say, well, maybe you want to look into getting into guiding or something. So as I said, that's when I got my guide's license for the first time, was in 2003. And I was a guide for whatever that's 5 years, 6 years. And then in 2008, I got my outfitter's license, which
Nice. Yeah, it's a big deal.
yeah. So just to differentiate for those people that are listening, watching may not know is, at least in the state of Montana, the guide is the guy that, of course, takes the client out and does the fishing. The outfitter does all the business stuff. So a guide has to be working under an outfitter, so
It's regulated. Like it isn't in some states. In Montana, I feel like they regulate it.
some states there's guys hanging out in the Walmart parking lot saying, hey, do you
Free
want to
for
go?
all.
Yeah. So fortunately, we have enough structure here in the state of Montana that so that's what the distinction is. The outfitter does the hiring of the guys, the booking of the trips, handles all the financial piece, all that kind of thing. That was 2008. Then 2011, the opportunity presented itself for me to open up a fly shop, and I was at a point in my life that I said, yeah, that'll be good for me to do. So I did that. So I was guiding and outfitting and running the fly shop all at the same time. And it was pretty hectic, but that was okay because I was at a point in my life that was fine. And I did that for whatever, 10 or 11 years. Now I'm just back on doing the outfitting.
Okay. And Chris, so you grew up in California. Who or what got you into fly fishing?
Well, it's kind of interesting is, I didn't grow up fly fishing. The closest thing to fly fishing, say I did with my dad, was, with a spinning rod with the old bubble on it and a fly, off the bubble, and then
That can work. Yeah.
in the Sierra Mountain rivers and streams on some camping trips. But I probably didn't fly fish for the first time until I was probably, I don't know how old I was, 25 or 30, I guess. And then I kind of dabbled in it, and was doing it a little bit. And then I didn't really get into it until about the mid 90s. And that's when, it became my passion, my
Yeah.
hobby and all of that. I was still on active duty at the time. So it was kind of difficult to do. I didn't get a lot of opportunities, a lot of time. I was able to, cobble some time together, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, to come on some extended trips, here to Wyoming to Montana in the late summer, early fall time frame. But yeah, so I was kind of late to the game, I guess I would say. I wasn't, I don't want to say fortunate enough, but I didn't have a fly rod in my hand when I was 5 years old with my grandpa, like a lot of guys. But
Yeah. Hey, it worked out.
yeah,
So where did you serve in the military? Because you said you were all over the world.
yeah. So I was an infantry officer by trade, and most of my time was on the West Coast. There's a couple of major bases and installations in California, in the Far East, Western Pacific. I didn't do too much time on the East Coast, other than going to some schools and things like that. And so most of my time was west and over in the Far East, Western Pacific. Yeah,
How did you like, your time in the military?
yeah, I did. And it's something that certainly myself and probably a majority of other folks, you don't necessarily go into it thinking that first day that I'm going to make a career out of this. I know some guys probably do, but it just kind of evolves. You're keeping your nose to the grindstone. You're keeping busy. You're doing all these deployments and training and different things, and you kind of get your head up out of the sand, and you look around, and all of a sudden you've been in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Just keep going.
Keeps going. So some point in there, you reach a point where I like this and this likes me, and
Yeah.
we got a good marriage there, and so you just kind of keep going, and then you say, I'm going to make a career out of this.
Yeah. What was your most memorable moment in your military service?
A couple of different things, but I would say probably the best assignment I would say that I had was as a company commander. So, Marine Corps rifle company at that time, it was about 125 or 140 guys, and having that responsibility to,
Yeah.
train and, basically be accountable and responsible. That's probably the best.
You like that?
Yeah, and deployed as a company commander. I was fortunate. I had command of 3 different companies for my time, so that was kind of unique and something different. So I was fortunate in that regard. And like I say, I did I don't know, I can't think of the top of my head, 3 or 4 deployments, I guess, as a company commander, which was nice.
Good for
So
you.
yeah,
Were you a yeller and a screamer?
tried not to be. Yeah, it's funny. You learn a lot about it's all about leadership, and you learn a lot about yourself, and what your strengths and weaknesses are as a leader. And there's different styles. Some guys, as you just said, that works for them. You yell or scream.
Command and control.
Yes, are not that way. And then that was the other thing is that I always thought too is all of the, I never had a, small business, run a business or anything in my life, but I thought, what, I can do this because of my Marine Corps experiences. It gave me, a lot of practical skills, about, planning, organizational skills, leadership, management, which is kind of the leadership of things.
Yeah.
But, I can translate that into running a fly shop, running an outfitting business. And I'd like to think that I've been able to impart some of that in how I work with the guides that I hire and that I work with.
I always think of, was it Lewis Gossett Jr., the guy in Officer
Yeah.
and Gentleman, just right in your face, screaming at you and everything, more push-ups. And it's not always like that, huh?
Yeah, not always like that. No, and that, like I said, that may work for some folks, and that's kind of, stereotypical, I guess, but, usually a little more persuasive style seems to work better.
There's other ways to treat adults, I guess, than yelling at them, huh?
Yeah, and it all comes down to, you know, taking care of your people. If you take care of them, they'll take care of you, and they'll get the job done. So
That makes sense. So you are involved in so many things. I couldn't mention them all in my intro, but let me just tick off a few of them. You're on the board of directors of the Yellowstone region of the Fishing Outfitters Association. You've been doing that for 20 years. You're a member of Trout Unlimited. You're president of your local fly fishing chapter in Billings, State Council of Montana, Trout Unlimited, board member of the Stillwater Valley Watershed Council, Citizens Advisory Council from Montana Fish and Parks Region 5. When do you have time to fish?
yeah, well, that's what I have told myself going into this season is, you know, finding more time to do personal fishing, because that is the truth, and the reality of it is when you're in the fly fishing business, particularly as a guide or an outfitter, you know, you're in the job of taking other people fishing. And, you know, I always get probably kind of a quizzical look on my face when I run into somebody and they go, "Oh, it must be nice, you know, going out fishing all the time." You know, and you just kind of laugh it off. And yeah, you're taking other people fishing, and you've probably heard the term about living vicariously
Yes.
through the people that you take fishing. So you, as a guide, you know, you want to see that angler that you're fishing with that day, whether it's somebody you fished with a whole bunch of times over the years, or whether you just met them that morning the first time. But, you know, you want them to be successful, because that, you know, gives you a feeling of satisfaction. Hey, I helped this guy,
Yeah.
you know, have a, yeah. And success isn't always measured, you know, by quantity and size of fish. We tend to focus on that. I've had countless times when catching a fish, well, oftentimes it's the first fish they may have ever caught. Certainly the first trout, a whole bunch of first trout in Montana, first fish ever on a fly rod, all those firsts.
And you're there for it.
Yeah.
You make it happen for them, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. So you get a lot of satisfaction out of that. You sure do. But I mean, answer your question, you know, so you don't get a lot of personal fishing time in during the peak season. So, you know, as we started off the program, you know, then in the wintertime, you know, the last several years, you know, I've been going down to Argentina when just a little anecdote, you know, we left this year for our trip on a Thursday. On Friday, the temperature at our house here was 37 below.
Oh,
So we got on a dock just
Yeah.
in time.
that'll let you know you got skin when you go outside if it's that cold.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story of the young girl and the dad from the Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch?
You know, I was thinking, and it's interesting. You know, I have a couple of different experiences, and a lot of times it's with someone that is just a novice or beginning or inexperienced angler. You know, it's not the guy that's been fishing for 30 years. So this particular story, I had a father and his, I think she was probably, I would say, a young teen. And, you know, maybe she was 12, 13, somewhere in that range. So she was not you know, a mid-range teenager, but a younger teen or preteen. And there is a facility here in near us here in Billings called Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch, and typically it's where kids go that they're not problem kids, you know, they're not disciplined, you know, type kids, but emotionally disturbed kids,
Oh, okay.
that type of thing. So the dad was from Oklahoma, if I recall right. He'd come up to visit his daughter for, like, you know, a week or the weekend or what have you, and somehow they got in touch with me to take him out fishing. And she thoroughly enjoyed it, but specifically, and to this day, she caught one of the biggest brown trout on the Yellowstone River that my boat has ever seen with a client.
Nice.
And you know, all of those things that go into that. I mean, just seeing, you know, her joy and happiness.
Yeah.
As I said a couple minutes ago, for me to be able to be a part of that, it meant a lot, and as I said, for a virtual novice angler, I think first time fly fisherman at least, to be able to go through all that, playing and landing of the fish, not breaking it off, not losing it. I mean, all that stuff that, even the most seasoned angler fouls up from time to time. And, yeah, that was pretty cool. And that's something that as a guide and outfitter that, and I try to impart this to the guys I work with or work for me, is you got to try to figure out, what is going on with that fishing trip for that day. And in this case, it was a father and his daughter having some quality time together, enjoying a day out on the river, recreating, and kind of finding out, what's behind the fishing trip, so to speak, and then trying to meet that need as best you can. Sometimes it's just, fathers and sons, I've had elderly fathers out with their 40 and 50-year-old sons, and then, it's a chance for them to get some quality time together. And, you want to try to, feed into that if you can, and service that. So, and just, to be a part of that, that
That's
kind of
neat.
stuff. I mean, I've had a lot of other flip side stuff, where people are very, very intense.
Uh,
You want to tell you one story?
yeah, let's hear it. Let me guess, Bobby Knight? No?
No, I
Okay.
didn't. A friend of mine, well, Dave.
Dave took him, I know. Yeah.
Dave's guided Bobby. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't like it.
No.
Interject here. We're talking about Dave Cumlane, who used to be with Montana Trout Fitters. We did a show with Dave on the Madison River last year.
But it wasn't necessarily intense, but you get a lot of couples, of different ages. Some of them are older, some of them are younger, that some of them have fished before, some have. But it's not uncommon to get, a husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend or what have you in the boat together. So I had this one trip on the Stillwater one time. There's this couple from Colorado, young couple, and we launch, and she's in the front seat and he's in the back, and he's just constantly on her about, how to cast it, mend it, drift it, all that stuff. Well, I was able to do that for about half a mile. And then I pulled over and I said, hey man, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but, I set her up wade fishing here. I said, can I talk to you a second? We'll walk over in the bushes. I said, look, she can only listen to one person at a time. It's either going to be me or it's going to be you. Now, you hired me
Yeah.
to do the guiding here, and I'm trying to do my job. So I tell you what, you just sit in the back seat. He could fish a little bit. I said, you just fish away and let me work with your wife and coach her and all of that.
Did he take that okay? Yeah. Okay.
It was great.
Nice job, Chris. That's a tough message to deliver. I imagine occasionally that kind of thing could backfire and make the guy mad.
Yeah, sure. A guy could get really, really defensive probably and stuff. I've seen that on occasion, hey, honey, do this, honey, do that. And here it's just going to cause a lot of confusion with people trying to do the coach guiding.
It's kind of like playing cards or golf or tennis or something with your wife.
Anything.
It's just, they're the hardest, it's hard to give people closest to you, call it feedback. You know what I mean?
It really is.
They just don't want to hear it. And like you said, that's why they hired you. What's your favorite shore lunch? Do you give your clients a shore lunch?
We do. It's very interesting. What I found, the majority of people that we fish with is they don't seem to want a big, elaborate lunch. I have done a cooked shore lunch before, and that can take an hour and a half. Most of them want just a sandwich lunch, and suffice it to say, that's typically what we provide.
Because they want to fish. Is that why?
They want to fish. Some people, particularly out on the Yellowstone, we're in a drift boat. They just want to pull over somewhere, eat out of the boat, and go and fish. But, I carry one of those little tables and chairs.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll set up stream side, and it's good to take a break.
Yeah.
and sometimes it's a strategic break. Sometimes I'll take an early lunch to maybe get the fishing going, to get the water warming up, get the
Okay,
bug.
sure.
Or sometimes, man, it's really on. I mean, let's not quit now,
We'll eat at 3.
yeah, we'll eat lunch at the ramp, kind of thing. But so, and actually, as you mentioned, I do get a lot of my lunches made at the Fishtail General Store. So kind of put a plug for them. If people are coming out to the area, they need to check out the Fishtail General Store. They make great sandwiches. Put together a nice streamside lunch, and a lot of times, I'm picking up lunches at 5:30, 6:30, 7, in the morning, and
Oh, are you? Okay.
you let them know the day before, and they're sitting there waiting for me. So,
They're in there. I'll put a plug in for them too. We were heading up into the backcountry the same trip, and we on the drive in we thought, man, it'd be really good if we had like a little can of tomato paste to go with some of that pasta we're going to be boiling up over our jet boil at 10,000 feet here in about a day or two. And we're like, where in the world are we going to find a can of tomato paste? And we go through Fishtail, and there's this little general store, and you go in there, and you feel like you've just gone back to 1935.
yeah,
Like the shelves are 1 by 12 pieces of boards, and everything
yeah.
just kind of stacked up in there. It felt like, I don't know, the 1930s. And sure enough, they had a can of that tomato paste. And thank you, Fishtail General Store.
Yeah, you can go in there and, get your typical, 6-pack of Coke and a bag of potato chips. But you can also, a handful of screws, you get some cold medicine, whatever. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's old fat. Okay, and where's your favorite place, or some of your favorite places to go at the end of a day on the river, a place to get something to eat and drink?
There's a couple places. Unfortunately, we just had one that went out of business here a year ago. That is one that I would have highly recommended, but
Which one was that?
it was called the Wildflower.
Oh, okay, I've heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, it was outside of just south of Zorky there, and it was really good. And we used to, I personally stop in there a lot. My wife and I, after a day of fishing, and it's great. There's a couple of different places. So as you mentioned, and it's got a little notoriety to it, the Grizzly Bar.
Grizzly Bar in
Yeah,
Roscoe.
Roscoe. Now they're seasonal. They're only open like in the summer now. So, and with everything, the way things are, right now, I think it's not just here. I think it's all over the place with the bar and restaurant business, getting help and all of
Yeah.
that. So I advise people to either call or check the website at a minimum or whatever. Don't just show up, because that may be the Monday night that they're closed, kind of a thing. So I can't give set hours that, oh yeah, they're open every day, 7 days a week or something.
Well, it was packed. We tried to get in there, and there were
Yeah.
no seats. It was like reservations for weeks on end. They were packed.
Yeah, that's a great place. It's a little out of the way here, but I have a lot of clients I fish with that are staying up in the Red Lodge area.
Sure.
So it's perfect. A day on the Yellowstone, day on the Stillwater, they're driving right past it. So that's one place. There are a couple of places in Absorky, but again, I can't say that they're open. For a breakfast, there's a place called the Rosebud Cafe, but again, it's hit or miss. I can't tell you that it's open all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's another restaurant called Touch of Country, but if you're down on the Yellowstone or fishing in the Stillwater below Absorky, going into Columbus, there's a place that has just been open for I don't even think they've been open 2 years yet, and it's a small place that it's called the Whistle Stop. It's on the west end of town.
Okay.
And it's not a big menu, but it's got the best burgers in the area.
Really? Okay.
But it's a great place. There's no alcohol, so you can't get a beer there, but you get milkshakes. You can get sodas or what have you. They have a couple of other sandwiches. They got a chicken sandwich, but so it's not like a big menu. You're not going to get a steak in there. You're not going to get a wide variety. The best burger.
And there's some good restaurants in Red Lodge too.
That's the other thing. So it's not that far. I mean, to go to Red Lodge, particularly in the summer when the days are longer. And again, a lot of people are doing their lodging up in Red Lodge. A whole slew of great restaurants. I mean,
it's a cool town.
Yeah, I mean, high-end steakhouse, Carbon County Steakhouse is great.
Huh.
There's oh boy, what's the name of it? There's an Italian place there that's great. I'll probably mess up the name of it. If I try to pronounce it, but
That's all right.
yeah.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. Lots of places when you're out in the country in this beautiful part of Montana. A lot of places to eat and drink. Chris, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Steve. Thanks. I hope some folks got some information that may be worthwhile to them. And if they come out in the area, fishing, I'd be more than happy to help people out. The phone call or an email or something. I do quite a bit of that. And certainly willing to tell you what I know.
Okay. How can people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me, Chris at stillwateranglers.com is probably
Okay.
best, and then from there, you can grab an email to me. I give you a phone number and you can text me or call me or what. Yeah.
All right, folks, there you go. Give Chris a call when you want to find out about the Stillwater, maybe book a trip. Chris, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening to another episode of the Destination Angler podcast. We'll be sure to post Chris's contact information on our website and some really cool pictures he sent me of the area and some of his top fly picks that we've been talking about. We'll put those out on Facebook and Instagram. You can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig@destinationanglerpodcast.com. And if you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by a Brothers Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.